Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for Fix Your Homepage, UX and Messaging that Converts. Whether you're on Shopify, Shopify Plus, or another platform, you're definitely in the right place. So I'm Catherine, the Director of Operations at Netalico, and I'll be your host and moderator. First, just wanted to give a big thank you to Shopify for supporting this event. Netalico is proud to be a Shopify Plus partner and part of the broader Shopify community. And now I'm going to have each of our amazing co-hosts introduce themselves. We'll start with Mark, then Reza, and last but not least, Jessica.
Hi, I'm Mark Lewis, founder and CEO of Netalico. We're a hands-on e-commerce agency that specializes in building and optimizing Shopify, Shopify Plus, Magento, and BigCommerce stores. We handle everything from UX design and site migrations to ongoing support so our clients can focus on growing their business while we handle the technical heavy lifting.
Thanks.
And I'm Reza. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I used to work at Shopify for over 2 years, so I've got Shopify context, helping merchants evaluate Shopify Plus payments, capital installments, and made my way over to Rebuy, where I started out as a merchant success manager, helping merchants really maximize the platform to boost their average order value, their customers' lifetime value, and conversions. And it's been a couple months now that I've come over to the sales side. The intention is to help merchants like you evaluate the best solution to achieve those goals. Been at Rebuy for just over 2 years as well.
Am I up?
Yep.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Jessica Malnik. I am a messaging and positioning strategist, helping out B2B as well as some particularly B2B e-commerce with actually making their websites actually convert when it comes from messaging and not just words on a page, but actually bringing in sales.
Amazing. So today our three hosts are going to walk us through some of the most common homepage UX and messaging mistakes that we see, and more importantly, what to do to fix them. So we'll share examples, practical tips, and tools that you can put to use right away. And before we kick off, one thing I just wanted to say is at the end of this, we're going to do a live homepage review. We have a couple sites, but if you'd like our panel to take a look at your site, go ahead and drop the link in the chat and I can add it to our list. So now let's get started. I will hand it off to Jessica to kick things off.
Whoops. Absolutely. So thank you so much for the intro. So one of the first things I always think about when it comes to homepage messaging, particularly for D2C, is what I'd like to call is finding your wedge. What is that messaging wedge that's actually going to make it stand out so that your products and your brand, if you want to think overarchingly about your brand, but also overarchingly about all of your products, what is that thing that is uniquely yours? And once you know that wedge, then lean into it within your homepage copy and through all of your messaging, because that's how it's going to separate your brand from your copy being on your competitor's site and people still knowing it's you. However, the opposite side of that is as well, which is if people don't know, and you could literally put your copy on your biggest competitor site and they would have no idea it's your copy. That is like the biggest red flag, but also one of the most common things out there. And I was like saying, it always comes back to not knowing what your wedge is. So next slide. So here's some examples of what I like to call was finding a wedge from sites that do that, from D2C or e-commerce sites that do a really good job of this. There's two things that I really like about Mountain House's site. They're in a very, if you know Mountain House, they're a very commoditized player within the space. However, one of the things that they do really well is they know what their wedge is. They really lean into it. And then they also let just a little bit of copy go a very long way. So you instantly know what their flagship products are. You also know that within their navigation menu, it's clear. They're not falling into the trap that I see all the time, which is basically the Chinese buffet style of links, where you wind up with 50 or 60 different things all above the fold. And then at that point, you're just confusing everybody else. And that's like the biggest trap ever. So next slide. Another example of a site that does a really good job of finding their wedge and spotlighting that bestseller product is this site in the pet care space. Again, very, very simple. They lean into a discount, which is extremely common, but they're doing it in a way that doesn't cheapen their brand. They're just kind of showcasing, hey, this is our best-selling product. This is our wedge. This is why we're different. And then next slide. And then another example, I'm going to just kind of speed up a little bit. This is another example of a site that just does this extremely well. They're leaning heavily into, this is their one main product, the Odyssey 2. Again, wedge, leaning directly into it, very sparse navigation menu, everything's kind of clicking. Next slide. I believe I have one more. This is another example. This is an example in the B2B e-commerce space, which is a little bit more in my lane, where it's, hey, this is just another example of this could be a pretty, there's some things that could be improved here. But again, another example, clear navigation menu, clearly you can tell what they're looking for, clearly focusing in on B2B, which is different from most cookie sites and things like that as well. So they're kind of leaning into that as well. Next slide. And now I'm going to go pass this off to Mark, who want to talk about some UX mistakes.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. So today I'm going to be talking about key UX principles that directly impact your website's performance and sales. So let's kick things off by exploring common UX mistakes that can silently drain your sales. First off, slow load times. Usually when testing websites, we check them in ideal desktop environments like we're on right now. But in the real world, shoppers are mostly on mobile devices, often with spotty connections. Slow loading pages frustrate these users, causing them to quickly leave. So optimizing images and videos can dramatically improve your site speed. Then there's poor mobile experience overall. Today, mobile accounts for around 70 to 80% of website traffic, especially e-commerce. If your site is difficult to navigate, buttons are tricky to tap, or things just don't load properly on mobile, visitors are going to instantly bounce. So always focus on creating the most smooth mobile experience that you can have. Another common issue we really see is cluttered layouts. If everything tries to stand out, nothing will. Visitors get overwhelmed not knowing where to click. So keep your layouts clean and straightforward to help visitors find exactly what they're looking for quickly. Also, inconsistent or unclear navigation really causes a lot of confusion. Your users should effortlessly understand how to move around your site. So clear navigation boosts both engagement and conversions. And lastly, missing trust signals like customer reviews, testimonials, or consistent branding make visitors hesitate. Good trust signals reassures visitors, making them comfortable enough to buy and put their credit card in your site. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about solutions to these mistakes. We like to say, treat your homepage like a welcome mat. While popular, rotating carousels can be distracting and problematic for accessibility. So instead, we recommend using a clear, static hero banner that communicates exactly what your site offers. Also, highlight key product categories right below the banner, which helps users quickly find what they're looking for. Visual hierarchy is another big factor. It guides visitors naturally, directing their eyes from the most important content down to additional details. So use larger fonts, clear headings, and distinctive colors for your buttons or links to make the user's experience seamless and intuitive. Speaking of buttons, clarity is everything. Next slide. Visitors should never feel confused about where to click next. So place obvious, consistent, and action-driven calls to action above the fold with phrases like shop now or explore collection. Clear CTAs remove friction and increase conversions. So designing mobile first isn't just helpful these days. It's essential. Most of your audience browses on mobile, so designing within mobile constraints encourages clear and intentional choices. When scaling your design up to desktop, though, maintain consistency and simplicity. Also, thoughtfully adjust desktop-specific interactions like hover states and expanded layouts to enhance the experience on desktop. And finally, building trust quickly. Quickly building trust with your visitors is crucial. Familiar design patterns like placing the logo on the top left and the cart on the top right, and clear navigation instantly reassures your visitors. You can reinforce trust with like reviews, star ratings, and trust badges, and many other things. Consistent visuals throughout your site also convey reliability and professionalism. And finally, let's talk about essential UX metrics. Monitor the differences in how mobile and desktop users behave. Mobile users often have a higher bounce rate and abandon carts more frequently. A healthy bounce rate we see for e-commerce sites is typically between 20 to 45%. If it's higher than that, you might have some issues that we've talked about, like slow loading or unclear messaging. Also, click-through rates on your main section or call to action should ideally be between 1 to 3%. We recommend using tools like Hotjar, Microsoft Clarity, Shopify Analytics, and of course, Google Analytics to really help track these metrics and pinpoint areas for improvement. So now let's look at a quick example of a homepage that I think could use some improvements. Notice here the navigation is a bit unclear. The shop link is hidden last in the menu, and the product options are buried under another click in the shop menu. So visitors have to scroll and click multiple times to understand what's even being offered and sold. This confusion can quickly lead to user frustration and cause loss of potential customers. Lastly, I believe this is a much better homepage example. Next slide. From a site that we recently migrated onto Shopify from Magento, and the homepage is a big area we focused on in the build process. Notice the clear navigation with the separated shopping links on the left and the non-shopping links on like the expert advice and about us on the right. Also, there's a very prominent call to action in the banner and above the fold. And below the banner, also the brand promises are quickly and clearly communicated, reinforcing trust immediately. And lastly, the product categories are displayed right away, allowing users to effortlessly understand what's available. I believe this is a really great example of an intuitive design that engages users right from the start. Now I'm going to hand it over to Reza to talk about some personalization.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. And here we go. Thumbs up. You guys can see Tubby Todd. Awesome. All right. So like I said, the name of the game here is how do we sort of personalize the experience for your customers to make sure that we're helping drive conversion. And so far, Jessica and Mark have both done an incredible job of explaining how are we communicating to our customers, how are we visually engaging and laying out things to help our customers navigate when they come to our websites and our stores. And so what I want to touch on is, okay, within that realm of communication and layout, how do we finally merchandise the right products to our customers when they get to our store? And so generally speaking, I think we can all agree that showing the right product for the right customer at the right time is kind of like the golden, circle, right? That's the key to success. The more relevant we can merchandise those products, the better we are, the better the customer is in fulfilling whatever that need is of theirs. And so generally speaking, when I look at home pages, again, when I was a merchant success manager, especially looking at hundreds of home pages, totally understand like that's where we want to kind of introduce ourselves. We want to introduce who we are, the problems we solve, the needs we can kind of have met for our customers. But there's really two customers we have to think about and it often kind of goes unchecked, which is we've got our first-time customers and we've got our returning customers. And so there's these two customers we want to really take care of and almost create this immediate funnel experience for these two customers because their needs are different. First-time customer, especially coming down here, as I kind of scroll down to this website, just to kind of show you, we've got, typically you'll see something like this, right? Meet the best sellers. And in which case, for our first-time customers, or I guess I should say, the questions we want to ask ourselves are, how are we attempting to show the right products to the right customer in that moment, whether they're a first-time customer or a returning customer? And that's a good prompt for those of you who haven't done this yet, doing a quick check. How many first-time customers versus returning customers do we have? And by going down that flow, this is where we want to be able to facilitate. And this is something that's possible with Rebuy, is being able to facilitate a single carousel like you're seeing here and have this carousel dynamically cater to each of those customer types. So for the first-time customer, you're looking at something like perhaps bestsellers, even using clear language. Again, Jessica would do a better job of this than me, but something like, new to Tubby Todd, start with our bestsellers, right? You're really directing your customers, especially those first-time customers. Whereas, again, what's possible with Rebuy in this carousel is we can dynamically change the call to action language and the merchandising for our returning customers to something like the effect of, hey, Reza, welcome back. Pick up where you left off. And now we might be showing something like buy it again products or recently viewed products. And so why is that helpful? Because as a returning customer, I might need to top up on my lotion, or there might be products that I did look at when I first came. Maybe I didn't make the purchase. And so this is how we could actually start leaning on, okay, well, these customers were clearly interested in these items. Let's bring that to the forefront and make their life easier. So with Tubby Todd, an example I want to kind of share here is we did actually run, and this is also something that's possible with the Rebuy platform, is being able to A/B test this so that we're not just coming up with things and thinking, well, maybe it'll work. I think it'll work. Let's let the data make the decision for us. And so with Tubby Todd, the problem was they were showing static products here. 4 products, never changing, right? Didn't matter who you were. And the idea that we had was, hey, first off, let's use a Rebuy widget so that you could actually gain some performance analytics to see how are we actually doing when it comes to this real estate, this really important real estate on your store. And then secondly, let's start gauging, is the static the best option? Or maybe we want to start showing different things like dynamic offerings to cater to, again, recently viewed, buy it again, AI, what have you. So we created 2 A/B tests. A/B test number 1 consisted of 2 carousel types. So a carousel type 1 was, there's the balloons. Carousel type 1 was just sticking to the existing, right? 4 predetermined products like you see here. And then the B test, as part of that A/B test, would have been 4 trending products. So these would have been dynamically shifting based on sales and what's actually trending. So that was our first A/B test. And then our second A/B test, the first A/B test was for our first-time customers. And the second A/B test was for our returning customers. Again, 4 predetermined products and 4 dynamic products. And through looking at the data, our merchant here, Tubby Todd, was able to actually identify and see, okay, actually in some scenarios, it looks like the dynamic was the winner, and in some scenarios, looks like the static was actually helpful here as well. And so, again, this is where you get to lean on data and start catering to your customers so that, again, we want to make our customers' experience as delightful as possible. Another example to showcase here would be Planet Beauty. Something that I really like that they've done. So they're using a few carousels here, and you can see we've got bestsellers, we've got top picks for you, and we've got gifts under 50. Again, very clean, very simple, to the point. And as a merchant, so right now I'm a customer. It's my first time coming on this page. I don't have an account with them. And so I'm seeing bestsellers, topics for you, and gifts under 50. But if I was signed in, if I was a returning logged in customer, the top picks for you, the merchandising here would actually shift from trending products to buy it again, recently viewed, and then AI recommendations. And so these are the ways where, again, whether you're catering to the merchant, you're customizing the merchandising really easily, by the way, to cater to your customers, and also having that language dynamically shift so that we're engaging those returning customers. Again, topics for you could say, hey, Reza, check out these top picks for you. And so these are the little things we can do to really engage our customers and optimize our homepage for conversions. But with that said, I will hand it off back to Catherine.
Awesome. Thank you. So with all of that, from messaging to UX to personalization, we're just going to take a look at a couple home pages to see kind of what we've taken and what is good, what we would maybe adjust to just make it a bit more practical. So the first site that we're going to look at is Allbirds. I know this is one of the sites that we tend to look at for great product page examples, and it's just typically an all-around good e-commerce example. So curious to hear what our panelists think about the homepage here. So I'm just going to scroll down a bit so we can see what's happening, and everyone can kind of assess from there.
Overall, I think it's a beautiful site, and as you mentioned, one that we reference pretty frequently. One interesting thing I noticed is in rehearsal yesterday, we were looking at the site, and they actually had two banner images rotating. So I was going to point that out as something, maybe they wouldn't want to do, but now they only have one in it. So I think it's a really good example of that they keep their homepage fresh and dynamic. So I think almost every day they change something on it. I also like that they have the shopping links on the left in the navigation, and then the content pages on the right. So similar to audio advice, they do a really good job of highlighting content versus e-commerce pages. One thing I think that they could do better is not dominate the above the fold with just the banner. If they even had kind of those other categories of bestsellers, new arrivals, like peeking above, I think it would draw people down a little more down to the other content in the homepage. But other than that, it is a beautiful site.
Yeah, I would add on to what Mark just said there, which was the design is amazing, the UX is amazing. Obviously, they're leaning on brand. Allbirds is a really, really well-known brand. So this is probably an example where the messaging is actually, in my opinion, the weakest part of this entire website. But because they have the brand name, they are a mainstream company. They have such a clean UX, a clean design, and a UX side of things. Like, it doesn't necessarily hurt them in the way that, let's say, you're an upstart to challenger brand to Allbirds could not get away with what they're doing. So if you were to scroll back up to the top, when you see 4/2 sale starts now, yeah, they're leading right down with the discount, but they're also Allbirds. They are the main brand. They can get away with this. They can do the discounts. They can do the things that if you're a challenger brand in the footwear space, you can't do any of this stuff. But because they're them, they have the recognition and they have the design UX, they can kind of get away with things that are not. They don't have a wedge on this. They really don't have a wedge on this page at all. And when it comes to messaging, they don't really have any of that, but it's fine because they are mainstream. But another point that I really like on this site is one thing they do very well is even though they break a lot of copy best practices, they still do a pretty good job of making sure that the main call to action is shop men, shop women for your perfect UI sale. And then they just have a couple of CTAs right at the top for the navigation menu. So they're not kind of going into what I'd call the Chinese buffet effect, where there's way too many notifications or there's way too much happening above the fold.
Yeah, and well said. I guess to piggyback a little bit on that is just as how they do kind of create this funnel of like shop men, shop women, and just from that alone, they're trying to create this like funnel for like choose your adventure kind of thing. I would say that's where we can do the same thing when it comes to the merchandising. We've got all the collections here, but if we were, I think it was down below, there was a carousel way down below. So again, Mark would probably have a way better assessment of like where this might be best fit. Maybe this is the best spot, but at least making sure that when it comes to the merchandising of merchandising of products for our customers, again, just like we're catering to our, choose men or women, this is where I would ask the question, hey, what's our ratio of like first-time customers versus returning customers? And how can we best facilitate and cater to each of them and create a nice smooth funnel, welcoming back our returning customers versus our first-time customers?
Awesome. Thanks for the review of Allbirds. We'll do just one other site, which I'll switch over to, which is Kilogram Tea. So I'll just scroll a bit so everyone can kind of see. And that's what we've got.
The first thing that stands out to me is they're using a hamburger menu for desktop, and people are pretty familiar with that now because of mobile. That's the most common menu design for mobile. But my personal opinion is on desktop, it's a bit of a waste of space. They could have a traditional navigation, but there's just a bunch of empty white space there. And it would be easier to see, the different types of tea. They can have whole leaf tea, chai, matcha, right, listed right there. And if people already know like what they want, they can easily click on the navigation there. Also, I noticed that the hero really dominates the page. I do see they have like a down arrow to kind of like try to draw people down a little bit. But in general, I think it's a little waste of space to always have everything pushed below the fold. And then lastly, I think in terms of branding, they could do a bit of a better job of like focusing on their branding. For example, they have a logo, Kilogram Tea on their packaging, but in the title, they're not using that font. They're using kind of more of a generic font. So it comes across as a little more like a stock generic Shopify site. And I think that does it does lack a little bit of trust of like professionalism and am I going to get this order, and like how long are they going to take to fulfill it and that kind of thing. So I think by really upping their branding a little bit on the site, I think they could really benefit.
Can I chime in? Awesome. If you want to go up to the top, one of the things that I'm noticing on the site is it's well designed, obviously. To Mark's point, I definitely think the hamburger menu might actually be a little bit of a miss. But one of the things that immediately stands out to me is tea is a commodity product. And their H1 being in yellow text over that kind of dark image, which is refreshing iced teas await, and then shop tea. That's a commodity H1 and a commodity not a wedge at all. So what makes their tea brand different than what you can buy at Lipton or Starbucks or the million other brands that are all selling tea and maybe lean into that within that each one. So it just becomes incredibly clear why their iced tea or their chai tea or their matcha is the one that you should buy versus any other brand. Is there anything else you would add?
Yeah, we'll point it out. On that point of like, they are a consumer brand. So to me, this would be such an easy play for making our returning customers, like showcasing like buy it again, even like special new arrivals, things like this to kind of excite those returning customers. And again, the beauty of at least a Rebuy carousel is like just being able to leverage like a single place of real estate that caters to our returning versus first-time customers. I think at the bottom there, it was showcasing bestsellers, which again, generally bestsellers, we want to show that to our first-time customers, and maybe we want to A/B test some of that language even just to see what's really getting our first-time customers excited and engaging here. But definitely want to double down on the buy it again, new arrivals, and get our returning customers excited to want to come back. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Well, those are the couple sites that we wanted to do a live critique on. And that pretty much wraps the content that we have for today's webinar. I just wanted to thank our 3 co-hosts, and everyone has a bit of an offer for anyone if they're interested. Netalico is offering 5% off our UX or CRO audits. Rebuy has extended their free trial. It's typically 14 days and we can do 30 days. And Jessica wants anyone to book a free strategy call to talk messaging. Anything anyone wants to add before we wrap up?
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for everyone attending, and thanks Reza and Jessica and Catherine for hosting. And thank you for Shopify for sponsoring.
All right.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it. This is awesome. And as you could tell, we're all really passionate about websites and stores and helping you guys grow your businesses. So it's awesome to collaborate.
100%.
100%. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, team.
Bye.